I'm Nick Coolidge with Kiwanis Service Leadership Programs.
This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, I'm Nick Coolidge, new business development specialist with Kiwanis Service Leadership Programs. And this session is Cultivating Servant Leaders, utilizing Kiwanis Service Leadership Programs. In this session, we are going to talk about servant leadership, or service leadership as we call it, what it means, and about the guy who created it. We'll review some of our flagship service leadership offerings, including Key Leader and Virtual Key Leader, which is something that we are launching this summer. And we'll also review where to find other resources to use and share, whether for programs or for content that you are delivering throughout your district. To start off, we'll talk about servant leadership in general. So this is Robert Greenleaf. He coined the term servant leadership. And he was a former executive at AT&T during the time when AT&T had a monopoly on the market in the United States. And while he was working at AT&T, he was observing how leadership played out and how top-down leadership ended up hurting productivity and morale within the organization. The leaders, he noticed, were starting to form a bubble around themselves, and they weren't as perceptive to the problems that were being experienced, not only by customers, but by workers who were lower on the ladder. So he came up with the concept of servant leadership, which flips the leadership pyramid on its head, if you will. It takes top-down leadership and instead puts the end user as the highest priority of an organization. And his general thought, his big thought, was that servant leaders begin with a desire to serve and then transition into a need to lead. Versus those who first seek out to lead, he found that those people may just be in the pursuit of power or in a positional title, and that they may not be as willing to understand the needs of the end user, the customer, the members, whatever is the general audience. He wrote a manifesto of sorts called The Servant as Leader. It has been adapted many times. He even adapted it to fit with different fields of work, including educators and for-profit businesses. And that servant as leader has set the template for what we understand servant leadership to be at this time. The way that Kiwanis teaches servant leadership is primarily through our flagship program called Key Leader within service leadership programs. Key Leader is a weekend retreat. It's 2.5 days, starts on a Friday and typically ends on a Sunday. And it breaks service leadership down into 5 key leader principles, which we'll discuss in a moment. The cool thing about Key Leader is that it's open to high school students, but also graduating 8th grade students. So if there are members of a Builders Club, which is our middle and junior high school program, or if there are just 8th graders who want to attend a service leadership retreat over the course of a weekend at a camp, they can attend a Key Leader program, and they might even meet students in high school in their area, or they might find an interesting Key Club, and that helps them create a network before they even get to high school. Key Leader weekends incorporate large and small group discussion sessions. We have a certified lead facilitator who leads every single weekend. They can be organized by Kiwanis districts, clubs, they can even be organized by schools or private sponsors. And they're often held at camps. But in any case, we create some sort of ropes or activities course. There are creative projects. The students are drawing, they're coming up with chants, commercials, and songs, all based around the concept of leadership so that they understand how to be a servant leader. The 5 principles are broken down here. So the weekend follows a progressive path where they start off learning about personal integrity, what it means to do the right thing. We then move on to personal growth, understanding how to balance mind, body, and spirit, how to challenge oneself and take good, positive risks. Then move on to respect for oneself and their others and the surroundings. There's a great activity where the students are all lined up and stand on one side of a spectrum depending on how respectful they feel certain activities are, and it offers a lot of opportunity for debate. We talk about building community, which is developing relationships, but also identifying how one can fit within a community, and that each of us bring different strengths to the tables, each of us bring different personalities to the table, and that those might suit a community in different ways. So what does each person offer to benefit a community? And finally, we end with the pursuit of excellence, which is expecting and achieving the best. And that is goal setting sessions, as well as discussions about really pursuing improvement within one's life and within their community. And these 5 principles together, we believe, make a servant leader, and they help students think about things that they may have never thought about before. There are a lot of students who come to Key Leader weekends who've never written their values down or have never considered what they value and whether or not they're following those values in their day-to-day life. It was established in 2005, and as you can see, it's been in many countries. We are actually planning a Key Leader event in 2020 in the Philippines, but that will likely be postponed until 2021 or whenever we can organize that type of event when travel is available after the coronavirus pandemic. But to date, more than 33,000 participants have taken part in Key Leader events, and there have been over 660 Key Leader events across the world. This summer, as I mentioned before, we are launching Virtual Key Leader. And this is in part due to the response to the pandemic, where a lot of in-person events will have to shrink in size or may have to be completely altered to be able to fit with new guidelines from varying local and national governments. But Virtual Key Leader is also a great marketing tool, which I'll talk about in a little bit. It can be completed individually as a family or in a classroom. So this is really something that is for personal consumption. It's a digital workbook that students can download. It's got videos embedded right in the workbook. So they'll watch a video, answer some reflection questions. There are research activities where we ask them to go online and look at different service project types and figure out what types of things that they're interested in. And it's actually a wonderful promotional opportunity. So if there is an in-person Key Leader program in your district, or if you're interested in generating or creating an in-person Key Leader program in your district, Virtual Key Leader would be a great resource to send. The registration link is going to be included in the resource for this session. So you can register, you can send that link to teachers to share with their classrooms, to Kiwanis clubs, to experience a little bit of what Key Leader is. And its programs and its activities are different than the in-person Key Leader activities. So it shouldn't be redundant if a student completes Virtual Key Leader and decides that they want to attend a Key Leader weekend. This is just an example of the Virtual Key Leader workbook. Again, this is launching sometime this summer. It's not available yet, but the registration page is live. And this is the first lesson. So each lesson starts off with a mindfulness video led by our very own Lisa Pyron, who works in the growth team at the service leadership team at Kiwanis International. And Lisa kicks off mindfulness with each session. There's a different activity to help people become more in tune with themselves, their surroundings, their feelings, their thoughts. And then we go right into educational practices with each of the core principles or Key Leader principles that we discussed before, as well as a separate track just for service leadership for people to understand who Robert Greenleaf is and what he did. So like I said, the videos are all embedded. Some of the videos are Kiwanis videos and some are pulled from TED Talks or other areas on the internet, and they cover a wide variety of topics. They're all interesting and short and designed to keep the attention of high school and middle school age students. But also, this is something that could apply to the whole family. It's a great activity to complete with kids or with a classroom. And finally, we will share more resources, again, in the resource for this session, but some places to look right now. If you're interested in talking about servant leadership or presenting a course on it, or even just incorporating something about service leadership into each of your publications, two places to go right off the bat are greenleaf.org. This is founded after Robert Greenleaf, the namesake. And they have a ton of different programs as well as plenty of resources to use and share regarding servant leadership. And then our very own keyleader.org. If you go to the resources section on keyleader.org, there is a section called Beyond Key Leader, which has links to a bunch of external websites and resources that you can use to better understand service leadership. And of course, you can always reach out to us, the growth team at Kiwanis International Service Leadership Programs. And we are more than willing to help pull together resources for a session or maybe even lead a session for any of your district events or training programs or for specific Kiwanis clubs. So please feel free to reach out at any of those times. And once again, this has been Nick Coolidge with Kiwanis Service Leadership Programs about cultivating servant leaders.